Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Lots to get into, including the Penguins, who have given up 11 goals in 2 games, but it's only 2 games. We'll talk about what they've done on the ice. Also, Pitt with a big win yesterday, a much-needed one, and now they have a chance to do what they've done a couple of times under Pat Narduzzi and knock off one of the elite football. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers in their best effort of the season, 41-17 over the Falcons. And here is your panel, left to right on your television screen. We have Will Graves, outstanding journalist with the Associated Press, far left. In the middle, it's Mark Kaboly from the Athletic Steeler beat writer. And to the right, Mr. Tim Benz from Trib Live and Steelers Radio Network. So let's get right into this right off the bat here. What did you learn about the Steelers you're feeling better about? Because this has been a week-to-week proposition. It seems like, you know, if they lose a game, oh, everything's going to fall apart. There's never going to be a chance. Now, all of a sudden, I saw tweets today saying they're going to win the division. Not so fast. There's still a lot of football left. The next 3 weeks are going to be critical. But, Tim Benz, just start there. What did you take away from this game today more than anything else?
Well, what I learned about the Steelers, first and foremost, if you're in television news, don't make David DeCastro mad. Secondly, I learned that Joe Hayden should probably be used to follow around the other team's best receiver more often. I learned that they're a much better team if TJ Watt is sent after the quarterback more often than he is dropping back to cover. I learned that if they are willing to stick with James Conner, particularly in the early portion of the second half of games that are close, it can behoove the team. Actually, I take that back. I knew a lot of this stuff going in. They needed to be convinced of it. I think they finally were. But the big thing I learned today is that, yes, this 2018 version of the Steelers can occasionally still be the version of the team that wins these kinds of games. You know, that game against the Chiefs, that's a game that they usually win. The game against the Ravens, that's a game they usually win. NFC team 21-6 coming into Heinz Field, that's a game the Steelers usually win. And I was worried about that coming into this contest, but they managed to get the job done.
I don't know. For me, I learned that maybe the Falcons aren't that good. I'm still not ready to say the Steelers are back. I'm with you, Tim, though. It was nice to see them commit to Conner early in the game and stick with it. I mean, it was embarrassing last week in a tie game where he gets the ball 3 times after halftime. I mean, I think they stuck with it. He was good early, he was good late, and he was pretty good in the middle. What does that mean going forward when, you know, LeVeon gets back? If LeVeon ever does get back, who knows? But I think today they were good, but you know, they could go to Cincinnati next week. We know what happens when they play there. Things get weird, things get ugly. And next Sunday, we could be talking about things falling apart again.
Yeah, I learned if they play the Falcons 16 straight games, they're probably going to do pretty well. I mean, this Falcons team was absolutely horrible on both sides of the ball. And it was evident from the start. And I think everything that they've been telling us, as in the Steelers over the past, you know, a couple of weeks, it comes to true. If they tackle, if they don't allow the big plays, if they get off to fast starts, if they run the ball, I know it might be all coach speak, but if they're able to produce that, they can win games. And I really like where this defense was today. And we can talk about all the offense that they put up today, but that defense is the reason why they won this game. I'm sure it helped that they got out to that quick lead. But the defense changes everything when you have a lead like that. You're able to bring pressure. You're able to do different things. You're able to do, you know, have Joe Hayden cover the best receiver like that. So I am really looking forward to see if they can do this over and over again, because I think Sunday really provided a blueprint of this team can be successful on defense. They're not terrible. There's things that they have to improve on, but they can win games with this defense.
Did we learn that they're better on third downs with L.J. Ford on the field and inside linebacker?
That's a big thing, Benzie. I think moving forward here, you really have to consider if L.J. Ford should be your third down back if Vince Williams comes back or not. I think that I'm not going to compare him to Ryan Shazier, but he got little pieces of him, as in the speed, the things that he can do. If you can limit him to the third downs, I think that's a huge part going forward.
Yeah, I think we learned, Bob, it's really important that they attack more than they just play to cover.
Oh, I agree.
I feel like at times they have felt like they need to drop a lot of guys in covers because they don't trust their secondary. Their secondary is benefited by the less time the quarterback has attack the quarterback.
Especially a guy like that. Matt Ryan seems to really get nervous in there, even as many years as he's played. And most of those guys are going to play. If you put pressure on them, they're not going to have the leg speed to get away from it. And I think they're at their best when they do that. All right, you give up a big play like they did, maybe on the 43-yarder to Sano. Play action made that possible, but I'd rather see them do that. It resulted in 13 hits, 6 sacks. strip sacks, all sorts of things. Now I want to talk about LeVeon Bell and Connor, since you guys brought it up throughout the course of that little conversation. Will, you know, it looks like LeVeon Bell's coming back after week 7 now. So the question is, and again, this goes week to week. Some people said last week, oh, Connor can't do it. Now all of a sudden he can again. What do you do when it comes to division of playing time when they're both here?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anybody that thinks that LeVeon's going to come in and look like the guy that he looked in the mid-October last year when he was by far maybe the best running back in the league. James has earned the right to have as many carries as he wants at this point. I'm not saying it's his job to lose, but Mike's not going to take away playing time because LeVeon comes back. We don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in. If he even gets here, because who knows? We could be having another conversation about whatever LeVeon is telling people next week about what he wants. So for me personally, though, I'm tired of this weekly referendum on whether James Conner is a good back after every single week. I mean, I don't know anybody else on the Steelers where it's quite cut and dry. Maybe that's because the results are more mixed with James than they are with other players. The guy's in his 2nd year in his league. Today was his 4th career start, whatever it was. Give the guy some time. They committed to him, by the way, 29 passes for Ben today? And I think, 20 carries for Connor 21. You get that kind of balance. I covered James at Pitt. He's a guy that likes to get the ball. He's not a guy that can have it 8 times and get you 72 yards. He needs it 20 times. So give it to him 20 times and see what happens.
Yeah. By the way, I also learned one other thing, just to reference back to your other question, Bob, before we get more into Connor. The Steelers are pretty good when Ben Roethlisberger hits Antonio Brown when he's open.
And also pass less than 40 times a game.
Yeah, we should throw that out there. When Ben and AB are on their game, not bad. So let's put that one into the mix, too. But the Connor thing as it relates to Bell, I think I'm not going to believe LeVeon Bell is going to be here until he's ready. I get where Will is coming from on the weekly referendum and he's tired and fatigued about the weekly referendum on Connor. So am I. But you know what? The problem is the Steelers keep that dialogue going, or they have until this week, because I thought they got away from Connor too quickly in games where a running game might have been nice to keep tinkering with. Like, it was tied 28-28 in the second half against KC. It was tied 14-14 coming out of halftime in a one-score game, 17-14 in the third quarter against the Baltimore Ravens. They didn't need to abandon the run. Hell, this game was close. This game was actually close to the third quarter, and they used Connor as a weapon to help stretch out the game. I would have loved to have seen that in those 2 previous home games.
I think I go back to my point. Are they going to play the Falcons every single week here? There are better defenses out there, and we do this every single time. If it's Le'Veon Bell getting injured, if he's suspended, what should we do when he comes back? D'Angelo Williams had 200-yard games. He leads the league. Le'Veon Bell is the best running back in the league, and he has to play. And he has to play as much as he can.
He was the best running back in the league.
He still is the best running back in the league.
I'm telling you, do you really think he's going to come back in against Cleveland and be a guy that's going to have 20 touches for 150 yards?
Maybe, Graves, that will be the time where you're working Connor a little bit here and there. But come December, I want Le'Veon Bell out there 95% of the time. I don't want him coming out.
Who's one that's clearly better in the AFC?
Who's what?
I'm asking Will. Who's a back in the AFC that's clearly going to be better than Le'Veon Bell?
We don't know what Le'Veon. We don't have no idea what shape Le'Veon is in. We have zero idea.
If he comes
so
back,
I'm going to be skeptical until I see him on the football field, because he's not even going on Instagram and showing you what he's working out on. He's going to the club. He's getting on the jet ski, which, by the way, a lot of 25 and 26-year-old guys do. So I'm not hating him on that, but it seems to be an odd way for a job interview to not even show, hey, I want to be paid, but I'm not even going to let you guys know what I'm doing while I'm not working, while I'm not on the field. That's a weird business tax. So I'm skeptical about what kind of shape he's going to be in when he gets here.
All right.
Better shape than me.
We have more.
There's a high bar.
We have more coming up. We'll look ahead a little bit to the Bengals game when we come back, because Cincinnati came back from the dead today and they won, so they're 4-1. But first, I want to tell you, there are a lot of big games coming up this week, but the only one big event is going on right now at number 1 Cochran Toyota. You get big-time offers on your favorite Toyota models, like $3,000 cash back on 2018 RAV4s and $1,000 back on 2018 Camrys. The big event also brings you really small lease payments. That's big. Now at the new number 1 Cochran Toyota, Route 30, North Huntington, or you could visit there, cochrantoyota.com. We'll return right after this. Number 1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by Number 1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.